got an audience
crowd
now.
now. Let's go home.
She's not allowed too much ham anyway.
It's not going to move out yet.
That's quick. Do you see how fast that moved?
Yeah.
Most smartphones can store 128 gigabytes, and this solid-state drive can store 1 terabyte of data, and it all happens inside this microchip right here. If this 1 terabyte solid-state drive were full of movies and TV shows, it would take about 3 weeks of non-stop binging to watch them all. So how can this incredibly small microchip fit such an insane amount of content? To understand that, we've got to zoom into a nanoscopic view of the insides. In here, we can see an individual memory cell called charge trap flash. This memory cell stores 3 bits of information by trapping different levels of electrons on a charge trap. Very few extra electrons are a 1, 1, 1, while a lot of electrons are a 0, 0, 0. And the other levels of trapped electrons have other 3-bit designations. Measuring this value doesn't change the amount of electrons, and once electrons are placed on the charge trap, they stay trapped there for years. However, when the memory cell is erased, the electrons are forcibly removed. To reach a terabyte of storage capacity in a single chip, this memory cell is copied, and it's copied a lot. First, these memory cells are stacked 100 layers tall. And then these stacks of cells are copied 40,000 columns across, which is then copied 50,000 rows down. You can kind of think of it as a 3D Excel spreadsheet, where the values can only be 0 to 7, and this spreadsheet has 40,000 columns by 50,000 rows. And then there are 100 different spreadsheets stacked in layers, one on top of another. In order to isolate and determine which row and layer to write to or read from, control gate selectors are used along layers and bit line selectors are used along the rows. We're going to zoom out to the view that we had earlier, where we can see the overall microchip. Here's the 3D array of charge trap flash cells and control gates that we were just looking at. This is a massive layout of memory cells, but engineers didn't stop there. In order to fit more capacity, they copied this layout onto the other side and then copied it 8 times again and crammed it all into a single microchip. And that's it. 3 weeks of non-stop binging movies and TV squeezed into a microchip the size of a dime. Watch our follow-up episode to get a complete and in-depth understanding as to how everything that I just talked about works. Thanks.
Hi! Like human evolution, information storage devices have evolved with time, from bulky books to floppy disk, CDs, and now flash drive. Have you ever wondered how such a tiny device is capable of storing so much more information than its predecessors? It all begins with flash memory, an electronic non-volatile way to store information. At the heart of a flash drive is a floating gate MOSFET, a type of semiconductor transistor. It consists of a source, drain, control gate, floating gate, and oxide layers. The floating gate is an electrically isolated feature capable of storing charges for a long time even without power supply.
There are two main flash memory technologies: the NOR flash, in which transistors are connected in parallel, and the NAND flash in series. Because the series connections consume 40% less physical space, the storage capacity of NAND flash is much greater. Hence, they are often used in flash drives and microSD cards. The two main processes involved in usage of flash devices are the retrieval and storage of information. But how does reading work? Information is stored in the form of charges accumulated in the floating gate. Imagine that this is an electron. When there are no charges accumulated at the floating gate, resistance between the source and the drain is low, and a low voltage is needed to cause the current to flow from the source to drain. This gives a bit value of 0. However, if there are charges accumulated at the floating gate, resistance between the source and drain is now high, and a high voltage is needed to cause the current to flow. This gives a bit value of 1. This knowledge can be used to determine the bit values. We do this by simply applying an intermediate voltage. If current flows, it reads a bit value of 0. And if current does not flow, it reads a bit value of 1.
Now, how is data written to the flash memory? Recall that the floating gate is insulated by layers of metal oxide. To write memory, we have to send charges through these oxide layers. How do we do that? The answer is quantum tunneling. Let us adopt the following analogy. The metal oxide acts as a potential wall. According to classical physics, an electron will never be able to penetrate to the other side of the wall. However, quantum mechanics tells us that it's possible. Suppose we begin with a bit 0 floating gate. To write the bit value to 1, we apply a high positive voltage to the control gate. This pulls electrons through the oxide layer into the floating gate. Conversely, to set a bit 1 floating gate to 0, we apply a high negative voltage to push the electrons out of the floating gate. Before we go, do you know that your flash drive has a finite number of write cycles? In fact, writing damages the oxide layer. But fear not, for a NAND flash can support up to 100,000 write cycles in its lifetime, and that's many years to come.
That's all we have for you.
Bye!